The bell above the diner door was still swinging from the force of the robber's entrance, its thin metallic chime echoing far longer than it should have, and yet Sophia didn't flinch, didn't rush, didn't even look up right away. She finished placing the last cup of coffee on the counter, her movement steady, controlled, almost ritualistic, as if chaos had not just burst into the room wearing ski masks and carrying guns that could end lives in a heartbeat, and this was the first thing that made Victor Moretti notice her, not the weapons, not the shouting, not the way the customers froze like statues, but the calm of a waitress who seemed completely untouched by fear, because fear had a sound to it, a smell, a tremor in the hands, and Sophia had none of it. The robbers yelled for everyone to get down, their voices cracking with adrenaline, chairs scraped the floor as people obeyed, a woman sobbed softly near the window, but Sophia simply turned, met the nearest robber's eyes through the holes in his mask, and said, "Coffee's hot. Don't spill it," in a voice so neutral it almost felt disrespectful, and the robber hesitated, confused, lowering his gun just enough for a split second of vulnerability that only someone trained to see power dynamics would catch. Victor caught it. He was seated alone in the far booth, back to the wall, coat still on, untouched espresso cooling in front of him, his face calm in the way men become calm only after surviving too many storms to panic at the sight of thunder, and as the robbery unfolded with sloppy aggression, his attention stayed fixed on Sophia, the way she slid the cash drawer open when told, the way she placed the bills neatly into the bag instead of throwing them, the way she kept her breathing slow while the robbers' hands shook like leaves. When one of the men fired a warning shot into the ceiling, plaster raining down and screams erupting, Sophia flinched for the first time, but only her eyes, just a fraction, not fear but calculation, and Victor's lips curved slightly because he recognized that look instantly. It was the look of someone who had already measured the room, counted the exits, and decided that survival didn't come from panic but from precision. The robbery dragged on, messy and loud, but something subtle shifted when one robber slipped on spilled coffee and nearly dropped his gun, because Sophia was there instantly, steadying his arm without touching the weapon, whispering, "Easy. You're safe," as if she were the one in control, and the irony of that moment hit Victor like a quiet revelation. Power didn't always announce itself with violence, sometimes it moved softly, unnoticed, until it mattered. By the time the sirens began wailing in the distance, the robbers bolted, taking the money and leaving behind silence thick enough to choke on, and that's when Sophia finally exhaled, long and slow, leaning against the counter as if the weight of what had just happened had arrived all at once, but Victor was already standing, placing a folded bill far larger than the cost of his espresso on the table, walking toward her with unhurried steps. "You didn't scream," he said, not as a question, and Sophia looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, noticing the calm in his eyes mirrored her own, the kind of calm you earn, not inherit. "Screaming doesn't help," she replied, and for a moment the world felt very small, very quiet, as if the diner existed in a pocket outside time. Victor nodded once, a decision forming behind his eyes, because men like him were always looking for people who didn't break under pressure, people who could stand in the center of danger and remain themselves, and as he turned to leave, he said, "People who stay calm when everyone else panics are rare. Remember that," before disappearing into the night, leaving Sophia with a strange, unsettling feeling that her life had just brushed against something vast and dangerous. She didn't know his name. She didn't know who he was. But somewhere deep inside, she felt it, the robbery was over, but something else had just begun, something that would test her calm in ways no gun ever could, and as the screen fades on this chapter, remember this moment, because stories like this don't reward fear, they reward awareness. And if you want to see how one calm decision can pull an ordinary person into an extraordinary world, the night Sophia's life truly changed didn't announce itself with sirens or gunshots but with a black car. Idling across the street from the diner 3 evenings later, its engine humming softly like a patient predator, and she noticed it immediately because calm people always notice details others ignore. She was wiping down the counter when the man from the robbery walked in again, no mask this time, no rush, no tension. Just that same unnerving stillness. And when he sat at the counter and ordered an espresso as if nothing extraordinary had ever happened, Sophia felt the weight of inevitability settle into her bones. He didn't introduce himself at first, didn't need to, because power rarely explains itself, and instead he spoke about trivial things, the weather, the quality of the coffee, the way fear makes people loud, until finally he looked at her and said, "My name is Victor Moretti," and the name landed with the quiet finality of a locked door. Sophia had heard it before, whispered in news reports and rumors, tied to disappearances, empires, and a kind of order enforced through silence, and yet she didn't react the way most people would. She didn't gasp or recoil or pretend not to know him, she simply nodded, as if he were just another customer, and Victor studied her carefully, because this was the moment most people failed. He told her why he had come, that he was building something that required people who didn't panic, who didn't betray themselves under pressure, people who understood that chaos could be managed if you didn't let it inside, and when she asked him what exactly he wanted from a waitress, he smiled faintly and said, "Not a waitress. A witness who didn't blink." He offered her a choice, not with threats or promises, but with honesty that felt more dangerous than either: stay where she was and live a small, predictable life, or step into a world where her calm would be tested daily, rewarded generously, and punished brutally if it ever cracked. Sophia didn't answer right away, and Victor respected that, leaving behind a card with no name, only a number, and the words, "When you're ready."